Ministry. The Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports will be led by Kipchumba Murkomen. Hassan Joho, John Mbadi, Opio Andai, and Wycliffe Oparanya from the opposition will lead the Ministry of Mining and Blue Economy, the National Treasury, Energy and Petroleum and Cooperatives, and MSME Development, respectively. Alice Wahome, who has been retained from the previous cabinet alongside Rebecca Miano, Justin Muturi, Salim Mvuria, Musalia Mudavadi, and Alfred Mutua will head the Ministries of Lands and Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, Tourism and Wildlife, Public Service, Investment, Trade and Industry, Foreign Affairs, and Labor and Social Protection, respectively. Debra Barasa will be tasked to handle the Ministry of Health, as Eric Muga could become the youngest CS who has been tasked at the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. Julius Migosi replaces Ezekiel Machogu at the Ministry of Education, while Dr. Andrew Karanja takes over the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development. Dr. Margaret Ndungu will lead the Ministry of Information, Communication and Digital Economy. Reporting for the Muslim Insight, I am Aban Shihemi.
Thank you so much, Aban Shihemi, for that detailed report on the cabinet changes. Now, moving on to other stories, is that the United Nations International Court of Justice, ICJ, on Friday declared that Israel's continued presence in the occupied Palestinian territory is unlawful, and that all states are under an obligation not to recognize the decades-long occupation. The court was responding to a request for an advisory opinion by the General Assembly on the legal consequences arising from the policies and practices of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem.
The International Court of Justice, ICJ, has legally confirmed that Israel is implementing policies of occupation and oppression against Palestinians. According to the ICJ's advisory opinion, Israel should end its presence in Palestinian territories as soon as possible and compensate for the damage it has caused.
The court is of the view that the prolonged character of Israel's unlawful policies and practices aggravates the violation of the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. As a consequence of Israel's policies and practices which span decades, the Palestinian people has been deprived of its right to self-determination over a long period, and further prolongation of these policies and practices undermines the exercise of this right in the future. For these reasons, the court is of the view that Israel's unlawful policies and practices are in breach of Israel's obligation to respect the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination.
The court was responding to a request for an advisory opinion by the General Assembly on the legal consequences arising from the policies and practices of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem.
In East Jerusalem, domestic Israeli law has been applied since the beginning of the occupation in 1967, and Israel treats East Jerusalem as its own national territory. In the present case, the court is not convinced that the extension of Israel's law to the West Bank and East Jerusalem is justified under any of the grounds laid down in the second paragraph of Article 64 of the Fourth Geneva Convention. Furthermore, the comprehensive application of Israeli law in East Jerusalem, as well as its application in relation to settlers throughout the West Bank, cannot be deemed, quote-unquote, essential for any of the purposes enumerated in the second paragraph of Article 64 of the Fourth Geneva Convention. For these reasons, the court considers that Israel has exercised its regulatory authority as an occupying power in a manner that is inconsistent with the rule reflected in Article 43 of the Hague Regulations and Article 64 of the Fourth Geneva Convention.
Israel is also under an obligation to immediately cease all new settlement activities and to evacuate all settlers from the occupied Palestinian territory.
The court found that Israel's settlement policy was in breach of the sixth paragraph of Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which provides that, I quote, the occupying power shall not deport or transfer part of its own civilian population into the territory it occupies, end of quote. The court further notes that Israel's settlement policy has given rise to violence by settlers and security forces against Palestinians. Having examined the evidence before it, in light of the relevant provisions of international law, the court considered that the violence by settlers against Palestinians, Israel's failure to prevent or to punish it effectively, and its excessive use of force against Palestinians contribute to the creation and maintenance of a coercive environment against Palestinians. In the present case, on the basis of the evidence before it, the court is of the view that Israel's systematic failure to prevent or to punish attacks by settlers against the life or bodily integrity of Palestinians, as well as Israel's excessive use of force against Palestinians, is inconsistent with its obligations.
For international organizations, including the United Nations, the court noted the obligation not to recognize as legal the situation arising from the unlawful presence of Israel. The ICJ further noted that the UN, and especially the General Assembly and the Security Council, should consider the precise modalities and further action required to bring to an end as rapidly as possible the unlawful presence of the State of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory.
In the present case, there is extensive evidence of Israel's policy of providing incentives for the relocation of Israeli individuals and businesses into the West Bank, as well as for its industrial and agricultural development by settlers. There is also evidence that Israel regularly legalizes outposts that have been established in contravention of domestic Israeli legislation, and that Israel's construction of settlements is accompanied by special designed civilian infrastructure in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which integrates the settlement into the territory of Israel. In light of the above, the court considers that the transfer by Israel of settlers to the West Bank and East Jerusalem, as well as Israel's maintenance of their presence, is contrary to Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention.
The advisory from the ICJ is a legal opinion provided by the court on questions of international law. While not legally binding, advisory opinions can shape international policies, increase moral pressure, and unilateral measures adopted by individual states, such as sanctions. Israel has occupied the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, since 1967 and has built and expanded illegal settlements. Salma Salim, The Muslim Insight.
Thank you so much, Salma Salim, for that report. Now, still on this matter is that the International Court of Justice issued its opinion, and the conclusion came out loud and clear. Israel's occupation and annexation of the Palestinian territories are unlawful, and its discriminatory laws and policies against Palestinians violate the prohibition on racial segregation and apartheid. This was historic vindication of the rights of Palestinians who have endured decades of cruelty and systematic human rights violation stemming from Israel's unlawful occupation. Here is a breakdown of the ruling by the ICJ. ICJ Advisory Opinion Practices of Israel in the Occupied Palestinian Territory. According to the ICJ, the State of Israel's continued presence in the occupied Palestinian territory is unlawful. The State of Israel is under an obligation to bring to an end its unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory as rapidly as possible. The State of Israel is under an obligation to cease immediately all new settlement activities and to evacuate all settlers from the occupied Palestinian territory. The State of Israel has the obligation to make reparation for the damage caused to all natural or legal persons concerned in the occupied Palestinian territory. All states are under an obligation not to recognize as legal the situation arising from the unlawful presence of the State of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, and not to render aid or assistance in maintaining the situation created by the continued presence of the State of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory. International organizations, including the United Nations, are under an obligation not to recognize as legal the situation arising from the unlawful presence of the State of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory. Elsewhere, 13-year-old grade 6 learner Fathi Hassan Rashid from Mus'hab bin Umair will represent Kenya in the upcoming International Quran competition in Dubai after she emerged as the winner of the National Quran competition held in Kirinyaga County. The Darul Quranul Karim Society, in collaboration with Darul Majlis Al-Islami Kenya, held the 8th Girls Quran competition on Sunday at Masjid Isa bin Maryam, Baricho Town in Kirinyaga County, which brought together participants from madrasas and institutions from across the country.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين.
The Girls Quran competition witnessed a large number of participants from across the country, with contestants from Kirinyaga, Nairobi, Eldoret, Mandera, among other areas.
Walioshiriki wametoka sehemu za tofauti ya nchi, kutoka Mandera, Nairobi na sehemu zingine na Eldoret. Pale yote wametoka, na mashindano ilikuwa tough sana zaidi ya miaka iliyopita, na tunaona vile ambavyo walimu, wazazi na wanafunzi wanafanya bidii sana kwa juu ya hawa watoto, na alhamdulillah tunaona matokeo mazuri sana, na tunatarajia inshallah huyu msichana atapeperusha bendera yetu ya Kenya na atakuwa kati ya wale washindi huko katika hiyo mashindano ya ulimwengu itakayofanyika Dubai.
Since its inception in 2000, the Quran competition has aimed to showcase participants' unique skills in Quran memorization, nurturing young minds in preserving the Quran and its message.
Hii ndio njia ya kuweza kuendesha dini kwa njia ya usalama, kwa njia ya upole, kwa njia rahisi. Maana mtoto akisoma Quran akionekana kila mahali, hakuna hiyo ndio zote kuonyesha kwamba Uislamu ni dini ya amani, dini ya upendo na dini ya usalama. Kwa hivyo naomba kila mahali tudumishe usalama, tusome Quran. Quran ndio nguzo zetu.
Speaking during the Girls Quran competition, Sheikh Ahmed, the chairman of the Darul Quranul Karim Society, said he was pleased with the turnout of participants despite many others who were affected by the ongoing demonstration in the country.
Si mbaya kuandamana, manake katiba inaturuhusu tuandamane, lakini kufika sehemu ambayo ama kufikia pahali ambapo unaharibu mali ya wenzako ambao hawana makosa yote, hiyo iwe ni private sector ama ni ya government, yote ni yetu, kwa sababu ya government pia inatengezwa tu na sisi. Ile tax tunakata ndio inatengeza hizi, na ndio inanunua magari na inatengeza hizi buildings za serikali. Kwa hivyo kitu ningewaomba hao vijana wetu, ni watu ambao wako na akili, werevu na wanaona mbele sana, wakubali wakae chini na serikali waweze kutatua, na yale ambayo wako nayo wapeleke mbele ya rais, na bila shaka tukikaa chini tutaweza kusuluhisha. Lakini tukigombana na kupigana hakuna kitu tutasuluhisha, na tutaharibu hii nchi yetu, na hatuna nchi nyingine isipokuwa hii ya Kenya. Hatutaki kuwa refugee kama vile wenzetu, majirani zetu wamekuwa refugee na wanapata shida sana katika kila sehemu ya ulimwengu.
Expressing his delight at the success of the competition, Sheikh Ahmed said the competition not only highlights the participants' dedication, but also underscores the importance of fostering Islamic knowledge and values among the younger generation.
Tushikamane na dini yetu, turudi kwa Mwenyezi Mungu Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Tukumbuke kwamba Mwenyezi Mungu ametuumba kwa sababu ya ibada yake. Wama khalaqtul jinna wal insa illa liya'budun. Sikuumba wanadamu na majini ila waniabudu mimi. Kwa sababu hiyo ndio Mwenyezi Mungu ametuumba na ametulete katika hii dunia. Kwa hivyo vile tunafanya shughuli zetu za kidunia, tusisahau pia sababu ya sisi kuja katika hii dunia. Siku moja utaondoka katika hii dunia, na Mwenyezi Mungu Subhanahu wa Ta'ala atakuuliza kwa yale ambayo umefanya katika hii dunia. Mshindi wa mwaka huu 2024-1446 Hijri ni Fathi Hassan Rashid.
Fathi Hassan Rashid, the winner of the Girls Quran competition, expressed her happiness and commitment to working hard as she prepares to represent Kenya at the prestigious International Quran competition in Dubai later this year.
I'm so happy that I'm representing Kenya in the competition of International Dubai. First of all, I'm thanking my mom, my Jama, and second of all, my parents.
The participants received certificates of participation and cash money.
Last year, the winner of the Girls Quran competition organized by the Darul Quranul Karim Society represented Kenya in the International Quran competition held in Dubai, where she emerged position 12. Reporting for Muslim Insight, my name is Mariam Sa.
MashaAllah. Thank you so much, Mariam Sa, for that beautiful report. And what I would say is we wish our young Fathi Hassan all the best as she prepares to represent us in the international Quran competition that will take place in Dubai later this year. Now, moving on to other story is that Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has called on Kenyans to have confidence in the Ruto administration as it tackles the challenges facing the nation. Gachagua also appealed to the youth, particularly the Gen Z, to be patriotic and call off the peaceful protest they are advocating. The Deputy President reiterated that the activation has been infiltrated by people with criminal intent who have been looting shops and destroying property. He called on demonstrators to give the president and government room to implement their grievances in a peaceful environment. The deputy president said the government is working to address the issues raised by peaceful protesters. The DP called on Kenyans to elect steadfast leaders capable of articulating their issues, uniting the country and offering solutions to challenges facing them. On crackdown of illicit brews and drugs, Gachagua said the government will not allow return of the vices, calling on politicians to keep off the exercise.
Vijana wetu wa Gen Z wameongea. Na tumewasikiza. We have listened to them. We have heard them. Mimi naomba hawa watoto wangu, my daughters, my sons, please, we have heard you. Mumeongea vizuri, mumesikika, yale yote mnataka imeeleweka. Ninamuomba tafadhali, msikubali tena kurudi kwa barabara, kwa sababu watu wenye nia mbaya wamehijack ile kitu yenu ilikuwa mzuri, kuanza wizi na kuharibu mali. Si ndio? Na hii mali tumetafuta siku mingi, tumejenga Kenya yetu hii, Nairobi tumejenga, na kwa hivyo wahalifu wameingilia hiyo maneno ya Gen Z wakiitana wanakuja kuharibu mali, na inabidi wakabiliano nao na kuwe na uharibifu wa mali na maafa na mambo zingine ambaye hazifai. Kwa hivyo mimi naomba vijana wetu, rais amemsikiza, serikali imemsikiza, sisi sote tumesikia na tumeanza kurekebisha na kuzungumza. So our children, our sons and daughters, please, we plead with you as your parents that we have heard you and you have made your point. You don't need to rub it in. It's enough. Let's deal with it. And we want to thank you for your patriotism and kujitolea kusema ya kwamba iko shida Kenya. And you have made a very huge contribution. Mambo ya pombe haramu na dawa za kulevya hatuwezi kubali. Hapana, no, we can't. Kuna watu merchants of death, kazi yao ni kutengeneza poison, wanasema ni pombe, wanauzia watoto wetu wanakufa. Watoto wetu wa kiume, kama rais na mimi hatungeingilia, in the next 10 years tungekuwa tumeisha.
Moving on to our last story is that Muslim leaders from Kirinyaga County in Mount Kenya region have lamented the widespread consumption of miraa and other drugs that have been cited as the main contributor to deteriorating moral state and underdevelopment among youth in the Muslim community. Speaking in Baricho Town, Kirinyaga County last week, Sheikh Zamzam Ahmed said drug abuse has reached alarming levels and if not checked, it risks destroying a whole generation of young people in the community.
According to Sheikh Ruwais, the lives of hundreds of youths continue to be destroyed due to the high consumption of both miraa and muguka, Hence the need for parents to initiate dialogue with their children to maintain Islamic moral values and keep them away from immorality.
Na hii kitu ni haramu na hakuna siku itakuja kuwa halali. Na ni madhara makubwa katika afya yako na pia katika familia yako. Kwa sababu hao watoto wanapoona unavyotumia hizi vitu, bila shaka wao pia watashika hiyo njia. Na ni hasara kubwa sana kwa Waislamu. Vile niliona Mombasa County wanatangaza sijui 40 million shilling watu wanatumia kukula hiyo majani. Ndugu zangu Waislamu, hii ni kitu ambayo ni haramu na lazima tuachane nayo, na tuaibisha sisi Waislamu na inaibisha hata dini yetu.
His sentiments were echoed by Kirinyaga County Commissioner Hussein Alaso, who said drug abuse is posing great challenges and is a major threat to socio-economic development.
Kirinyaga imeweza kuonekana kwa runinga kwa kuna watu ambao wamekufa kwa sababu ya kutumia pombe haramu, pombe mbaya, sumu. Vita inaendelea na tunaamini ya kwamba tutashinda, na tutashinda hiyo vita, na tunaomba pia wakazi wenyeji tusaidiane, tushikane mkono ili tuweze kuangamiza pombe haramu ya sumu ambayo inamaliza watoto wetu.
Several counties in the country have banned the entry, transportation, distribution, sale and use of mogoka within the counties including Mombasa, Kilifi, Taita Taveta and Kwale.
County ya Mombasa ni ya kwanza kusema hatutaki mogoka yaingie katika mji wetu wa Mombasa.
Sheikh Ruwais lamented the lack of Islamic institutions in the Mount Kenya region that can provide educational needs of young Muslims in a structured and nurturing environment.
Masikitiko makubwa sana ukiangalia kutoka Kiambu County utaremuke mpaka Meru County, Laikipia County, hakuna hata madrasa moja ambayo unaweza kutegemea. Hakuna hata moja, na hakuna hata viongozi ambao wamekaa chini kufikiria juu ya hiyo kwamba watoto wanapotea, vipi tutawashika hao watoto wetu na kuwarudisha katika dini. Hakuna hata chuo moja ya kidini ambayo inaongoza hao watoto. Bila shaka hiyo ni masikitiko makubwa sana, na hata viongozi wetu na hata wale ambao wamechaguliwa kuwa kama chairman wa msikiti, nini unafanya ndugu yangu ikiwa wewe hauwezi kushughulika na hao generation ambayo ni kitu muhimu sana katika umma yetu na katika nchi yetu? Unawacha wanapotea, wanajiingiza kwa vitu ambazo Mwenyezi Mungu Subhanahu wa Ta'ala ameharamisha.
In May this year, Muslim clerics from Garissa County called on the governors of northern Kenya counties to ban mogoka and miraa from entering or being consumed in their counties. The religious leaders say that the effect of the use of these drugs are detrimental to the lives and generations of the people. Although the National Agency for the Campaign Against Drug Abuse has not banned mogoka, it has classified it as a harmful substance based on the stimulants cathinone and cathine found in the plant. Shadia Ramadan for Muslim Insight.
Now that report from Shadia Ramadan brings us to the end of our first segment of the Muslim Insight. Join me in the second segment as we do the Friday Bulletin Review. Stay tuned.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation. Verse of the day.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكن خيرا منهن ولا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا بالألقاب بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان ومن لم يتب فأولئك هم الظالمون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون.
Enyi mlioamini, munapoitwa kuhudhuria swala ya Ijumaa, fanyeni haraka kuikimbilia, muache biashara zenu, hilo ni bora ikiwa mwelewa.
Isikilizeni kwa umakinifu khutba ya Ijumaa
ili uzidi kujenga imani yako na kupata faida nyingi ya siku hii.
Coming to you every Friday from Jamia Mosque, Nairobi.
Live on HorizonTV.
Katika kipindi kijacho.
Wewe hatmi yako ulimwenguni umekufa katika madhambi. Na Mtume anatuambia innamal a'malu bil khawatim. Hakika amali, vitendo vya waja vyategemea na mwisho wake. Wewe umekufa katika baa, umekufa mlevi, umekufa katika zina. Baadhi ya vijana wetu ni majambazi, ni waizi. Amepigwa risasi baada ya kupatikana akiba, utaenda kumjibu nini Mwenyezi Mungu Subhanahu wa Ta'ala? Kwa hivyo wanapokuwa waja wema, wao wanafikiria adhabu ya Allah ni nzito.
On the next episode,
Sharia doesn't recognize interest as an expense, as a haq to that credit institution. Doesn't consider it that you should pay, neither consider that it is right to the credit institution to receive. Sharia doesn't consider interest as a right of the creditor. So you will only deduct principal, and you cannot deduct the interest in this particular case.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for staying here with us at Horizon TV. Welcome back. This is our second segment of the Muslim Insight, whereby we will be having our Friday bulletin review. But before that, I am being informed here by Mustafa Kasim that the Jamia Open Day that was scheduled tomorrow, 27th of this month, have been postponed till further notice, and the dates will be communicated inshallah. So be prepared. The open day is still there, but the date has been postponed, or rather, date will be communicated later, inshallah. We are having Friday Bulletin Review today, and I am joined by Musa Mwale, the Director of Maslah Mediation Center. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you doing today?
Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, really glad to have you here today as well. We are having this conversation or discussion on Friday Bulletin Review. We want to know what is happening in the Muslim community, make some insight, put some insight a bit on the stories that have been outlined here in the Friday Bulletin. Now, on the front page, we can see that Imam advocates for mosques to serve as community hubs. What's your take on the role of the mosque towards the community?
Thank you very much, Ofti. And I want to actually laud the Imam for making this call, because it couldn't have come at a much better time. We unfortunately have consigned the mosque or the masjid for prayers only. Yet they are supposed to be centers, you know, for all activities. When you look at the days of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the mosque was a center for administration, you know, everything. So what we have done is that because we have consigned it for prayer alone, it becomes very difficult to even attract people who are otherwise a bit lazy or a bit weak in performing their salah, because other activities can attract people eventually to perform their salah and to listen to darsas. So making a mosque a center of community activities like you know, indoor sports, you know, a resource center for reading, a reference center, you know, people just coming in to socialize and discuss issues that has to do with the community, having things like the gym around and all those kind of things will be able to attract more people, not only to the masjid, but also focus those people that we think might be going astray because they don't have some level of leadership or guidance in their day-to-day life. So this is quite good, and I think we should, I know Jamia Mosque is a center of quite a number of activities. It's not enough yet, because I'm sure many years ago we used to think of even having a gym here. It was not actualized, but at least we appreciate that there are quite a number of activities, the educational activities, the social activities, or social intervention institutions. So we need to make our mosques, especially those mosques that have bigger compounds. We can even have sports facilities like basketball, even football, you know. And other games, even, you know, swimming pools. I've been to some centers in the US, and it's a complete center. They have schools, they have swimming pools, they have restaurants, they have, you know, almost all indoor games.
So you are saying that we should be having this kind of activities being catered for, or rather being made by the mosques?
Yes, they should. We should encourage mosques to have those activities.
And I can see we also have the Jamia Open Day, which, okay, it's unfortunate that the date has been postponed, but it's still there.
It is a great activity, as we shared before here, that it opens up doors for non-Muslims to get to know what Islam is all about, to visit the mosque and clear the misconceptions that are there outside. But also other activities that we know that Jamia has been undertaking. We should encourage also other mosques. Even if they don't have bigger compounds, they can have 2-3 offices that cater for youth interests or youth activities, women, and general planning, you know, entrepreneurship, agriculture for those mosques that are back in the rural. Even just focusing people on farming, you know, poultry farming, you know, horticultural farming. You know, such activities will help the community, other than just people coming to the mosque to pray and then go.
So those are the impacts of the mosque towards the community. Yeah. Let's look at other impacts. You can see that on page 2, leaders urge Muslim parents to inculcate Quran knowledge. And from the picture there, we can see that there is a young girl who is being awarded a certificate for winning a girls' Quran competition. What's your take on youth participating in such activity, or rather in Quran competition?
Yeah, as the headline here says, that we should, as parents, inculcate the Quran knowledge. It's good that at a young age, the formative stages of a child, that's when their mind is quite magnetic. It grasps everything and it stores there permanently. And that's the time to actually foster the values of people understanding the Quran.
Maybe I can ask my producer or director there, maybe to show us what I am talking about on the screen, because I'm talking about a picture of a young girl being awarded a certificate. Maybe, Mariam, we can have that on screen for better understanding of our viewer. Yeah, there we have it. Leaders urge Muslim parents to inculcate Quran knowledge. And that is the picture I am talking about.
Yeah, well, as I said, you know, Jamia Mosque has been actually encouraging this. They have a Quran competition every year. And yes, it has been based in Nairobi. But I'm sure with time it will be all over. Of course, this is Kirinyaga County, where the initiative also has taken place. And as I mentioned before, we should encourage other institutions to also encourage Quran competitions and young people understand Quran. Because once they start going to school, then the schoolwork becomes overwhelming. There are a lot of tuitions, a lot of homeworks, that they don't have time anymore for Quran and Islamic knowledge. So it's good that we start nurturing this at a very early age. And it's good, of course, we encourage the continuity of this competition so that people continue even in the school, in colleges, in the universities. This is good because it's the only way we are not only going to preserve Quran, but we're also going to preserve Islam.
You know, you find most of the children who are not maybe taken to madrasas or who are at home, parents tend to pamper these kids because you find that they are given the authority to maybe look at the TV, watch cartoons. How can that affect the kid?
Yes, as I've said, the young mind...
Or maybe what could the parent do?
What we are saying is that kids at that formative stages, they need to be inculcated, positive values need to be inculcated into them. Because that is the time their brain is quite magnetic. It picks everything and stores permanently. So as they say, garbage in, garbage out. If you expose your kid to feeding, I mean, eating information or consuming information that is not healthy for them, you are simply destroying them. So they should be able to feed on good information, like Islamic values, the Quran, and other moral values that are positive. And because when they watch TV, they learn a lot of useless things, quite harmful, some of them. You know, violence, you know, nudity, you know, quite a number of very, very harmful stuff. So I encourage people to, just like, I tell people, just like if you eat bad food, you have a stomach upset and probably you fall sick. So does consuming bad information. It also has to cause your brain to sort of get damaged somehow. So as parents, we need to encourage young people to pursue the knowledge of Quran and other Islamic disciplines.
There is a question that I used to ask, or maybe I'm getting it from my colleagues, that what's the benefit of reading the Quran? And is it okay if you only concentrate on memorizing the Quran and you don't maybe get other hadith, or maybe you get other teachings of Islam, is it okay to only have the knowledge of Quran?
It's good to have knowledge in totality, incomplete. So memorizing Quran, but also understanding the meaning of that Quran, and appreciating and understanding the way of interpreting that Quran through the hadith, you know, and through the other sunnahs, because you cannot solely just understand the Quran by itself. The Prophet Rasulullah is the one who came to help us understand the Quran by living it. So his actions and his words was direct translation of what the Quran says. So therefore it's good to have knowledge in totality, but it's also, of course, as we pursue the Islamic knowledge in totality, that is the Quran, the tafsir, the hadith, you know, the fiqh and all that, we should also understand other, as they are probably referred to as conventional knowledge, knowledge of maths, knowledge of physics, knowledge of geography, knowledge of biology, because that's how we will now ably apply the Quran. Okay. So it's good to pursue knowledge in totality.
MashaAllah, that is really great. And in your maybe what you deal with in day-to-day activity, you are the director of Maslah Mediation Center. You deal with marriages and everything, couples, blah, 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 everything. So there is a topic here on page 4, or rather a story, with the headline, Dealing with the Pressure to Get Married.
Yeah, this is quite common, especially nowadays, when, you know, unlike before, whenever you, a young person reached the age of maturity, the next step was for them to get married. Right now, because of other things in life like education, like careers, people now prefer to, of course, first of all, finish your education, and by the time you're finishing your high school education, you have you're above the age of maturity. That's you're 18 and above. And by the time you finish your college, maybe you're about 22, 23, and depending on what career one has taken, some will even complete college at 25, 26, especially those people who are pursuing disciplines like medicine, like engineering. They take longer in school. However, of course, it comes a time when, of course, you've reached the age of maturity, a concern sets in on your personal self and also from the community. You know, your parents, of course, start getting worried because there are a lot of pressures out here, and the pressure for young people to go astray is also very high with the technology, with telephones and all that. So sometimes parents feel it's right for a younger person to get married early before they start indulging into an Islamic activities. So this pressure comes in, of course, because of the push by society, the concern by guardians or parents. And of course, it's good for people to appreciate that the pressure is not from maybe a selfish point of view. The pressure is just a concern. And therefore, people have to know how to deal with it in terms of appreciating that, yes, at one point in life, it's good for people to get married or to get a partner to live with legally or Islamically. But also there is time for everything. Yes.
We find that most people don't know when is the right time to get married. Like, for example, for a lady, you've talked about there are other factors that are hindering people to get married. Like, for example, a person says that he or she wants to finish his or her education. Maybe what is the right time? When do you feel like it's the right time for you to get married? For a person to get married?
I think there's no uniformity in that. There's no right time. I think the right time is when, first of all, a person is mature. Second, they are able to take on the responsibility of marriage. That is, if they are If it's a lady, she knows, she appreciates that when you get married, and you might be blessed with children, and therefore you have to be able to be a mother. And for a young person, for a young man, of course, you have to be ready to be a father. And therefore, are you psychologically, mentally, physically prepared for such a responsibility? And therefore, that's why people would say, let me finish school, let me start working. Then once I start working, then I'm able to provide for the family. And for young ladies also, it's also encouraged that they would also have some sort of career to help them in raising their children properly. We say a mother is the first school or the first college of a child. And therefore, they also need to have been empowered somehow to be able to take care of these children. So there isn't, I cannot say there's a specific right time or age. I think it's just when someone feels that they are able, they are mature enough mentally, or psychologically, and physically. And people can get married even while still in school, as long as they have supporting guardians or parents who can support them financially. But it's also practical that as young people or young men, you don't just go into marriage because marriage is there. You need to go into marriage because you're prepared to be a responsible father and a responsible husband.
Wow.
Yes.
Mashallah. So this means that all in all, it's all about the responsibility. Marriage is all about responsibility.
Yes, yes.
Mashallah, that is really great. And I'm glad that we had this story because it's what you specialize with in the day-to-day activity. Thank you so much. I think due to time, because it's exactly 9 in the morning and our time is up, so I think we are going to end it there. Thank you so much for coming here today and helping in the Friday Bulletin Review. Because there are so much story in the Friday Bulletin, so make sure you get yourself a copy of the Friday Bulletin so that you understand what is going on in the Muslim community as well as in the country. Be on the know of what is happening around us. Until next Friday, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.